Good morning, everyone. This is Stacy Turner with our DMOpro Zoom conference week. I know it's going to be so exciting to see everyone. We've got a lot going on this week, trying to prep. Some of you are probably leaving a little bit early. I hope you're getting a chance to hang out with some friends. I always looked forward to conference week, especially when my kids were little. It was just a fun getaway with friends, and I knew it was like safe, fun, that just get to be with really fun, happy people that love what they're doing. It's so hard to explain to people why they need to come, but that's one of the things I say. It's like thousands of the most happy, healthy people that love their job and love what they're doing and all getting together. And I said, you're just, people aren't complaining. They're talking, they're excited, they're hugging, and it's just like a big old family reunion. So I know it's going to be a great time together, and there's still time to come. I'm sure there's somebody who has points somewhere on some card that can help you pay for a conference ticket if you really want to come. There's always space in hotel rooms. Sometimes last minute is just like, okay, let's go. So even if you have brand new team members, keep inviting them, because you never know who's going to say yes and will be able to join you even last minute. And you've heard some pretty amazing stories of people over the years that have said yes last minute and decided to come, and it was a game changer for them. So just something I was thinking about this week, and we were in the car on the way to dinner, and something had happened on Saturday, and I was just saying, how easy it is to deflate your story when you're talking to people. And these are things, so this is the title of today, 10 ways to deflate your story's impact. So it's kind of a spoof, but kind of not, because these are things either I have heard team members do or other team members. I've seen it done, or I've done it myself. Okay, so you want a story that's impactful, right? Because facts sell, but stories sell. Stories are really where the personal impact and connection of human experience comes in. So, it's a vulnerability when you're sharing your experience, and there's things that you can do that really make it an impactful story. And there's things that you can do that will really reduce that impact and deflate it to where it doesn't sit well, it doesn't land well, it's not easy to continue the conversation, might add confusion, and just it doesn't take the conversation forward or the atmosphere of the group experience forward either. So especially if you're working in an environment where you've got let's say at an event where people are sharing their stories and their experiences, you really want to make sure that they're coached ahead of time on how to do this effectively, because in a group experience, it can be super powerful. I mean, when you're hearing these different people share their experience and how it's changed their life, and then one person's story can really just take it to where you're like, why'd you go there? Like that totally changes the atmosphere, changes the energy level of the room. And then you just kind of got to, okay, how do we get back on track? And as a leader, that is your job, is to like take what they're saying and turn it back to the positive and like move the conversation along to somebody else. If you're presenting, that's an important aspect. If somebody has a question that you're just like, why'd you ask that question right now in the middle of the presentation? Probably don't ask them that. Just say, great question. We'll come back to that and move along. So these are 10 things that, like I said, either I've done myself or I've seen them done, or have been told this is what happened when so-and-so shared their story at the event. So we don't want a deflated story. We want a story of high impact. So the first one, this is what not to do, is to start with a negative statement. So I know you'd be like, well, who would do that? It happens. If you're just not prepared and somebody just starts talking, they start with a negative statement that really changes the tone and sets the tone for the rest of the story. And you're just like, why would you say that? So it could be something like, well, when I first learned about Juice Plus, I talked to my husband and he hated the idea. That's probably not the first thing to start with. It could be part of the story and it could be part of the, your experience, but is that the first thing to go off with? Or saying, my kids hate the gummies. They will not eat them at all. So we do the capsules. Okay, that could be true, but is that the best place? And do you have to say it in that way? You could say later on, just say, my kids do the capsules. They're not fans of gummies, and so we do the capsules. I mean, really, you can take it in a nicer way. So just don't start on a negative right to begin with. Second one is don't share why you delayed in getting started or why you delayed ordering. So if you said, well, I heard about this 10 years ago and it made sense to me, but our budget was really tight. Trying to think of other things that have been said, just like you just keep coming up with reasons why you didn't get started right away, then, and if that's part of your story, it's part of your story, right? But you can still say it in a way that you could say, I heard about it from 10 years ago, but I was not ready for it. I wasn't in a place where I was at willing to make changes, or I really knew nothing about nutrition. I didn't take the time to dive in. I knew it kind of made sense, but I just was busy and I brushed it off. Even those things, like, it's okay to be a part of the story, but is that really the most important aspect of this right now? I hope I'm getting some error on my thing. Hopefully it does not take my video off. Okay. So, is that really the best part of your story? Does it need to be said? Does it need to be included? Probably you could just never include why you delayed getting started, right? It just doesn't necessarily need to be in there. I would say most of these aren't necessary, even if they're true. It doesn't help lead that conversation forward. So don't share why you delayed ordering. Nobody really needs to know that. Number 3 is, I would avoid saying why your product is unnecessary. And I know you're like, who would say that their product is unnecessary? Like, why would you say that? But it might sound something like, I do the capsules and I don't really like the smoothies, so I don't use the complete. Or I would just get rid of or I would just start with the capsules. Now, you could always do the shakes later, but they're really not necessary right now. Like, you don't have to get started with those. How do you know what that person is willing to invest in? How do you know what they're, able to or looking for? Are they looking for a meal replacement? Are they looking for an easy meal of 20 plant foods? If you're asking good questions, that's an important aspect in sharing your story. But if you're sharing from the front of the room, there would be no reason to include why you're not taking one of the products, right? For myself, I will say I'm not a granola bar person, so I don't really order the bars. But if you like granola bars, maybe you'll love them. Why do I need to say that? I could just say, we also have bars and people like the bars. I could, or just don't say anything about the bars. Like, I don't have to say anything if it's not something that I love, but I could just not say it versus incorporating it from, I don't like granola bars, I don't eat them, but you might like them. Probably not the best. And I have said that multiple times. So that's no longer going to be said. Okay. So saying somehow that your product is unnecessary. Number 4 is showing no emotion or too much emotion. So I'm all for the vulnerability of, teary-eyed, emotional, getting welled up, having a hard time continue. Like, there's something that shifts when somebody's really into their story, like they're really sharing it and they get choked up and they're emotional. Like, my eyes tear up. You can see other people, like, they really connect with what they're saying. Like, that person's really feeling it. I'm all for that. Like, be real. If that's where your emotions go, you don't have to stop it, hold it back. You can say, give me a second. Like, people will give you a second. Like, they really want to hear what's coming next. So I'm not saying don't show emotion. I would say it's much better to show emotion than just seeming super dry, no emotion, just telling all the facts and then just moving on. Or it just seems like super practiced and sort of automated and fake. You don't want that side of it either, right? So it's totally fine to show some emotion, some connection, to use your hands, to be like, just be real in that conversation and with your story. But I've also seen the other way where they get emotional and just out of nervousness do something that just kind of is odd, and you're like, why'd she do that? And here's an example, and I've seen this twice, where for some reason they would flip their head forward and then flip their hair back and like put their hands over their eyes, and it's just a nervousness response, but it just changes the atmosphere of that conversation, that story now. So now it's just like, okay, wasn't expecting that. That was just a little bit odd. So it's nothing more than just practicing it ahead of time so that you're not so emotional that you're sobbing, right? Like that's also going to take it like, whoa, that's really heavy. And then I would also say not sharing something that's super heavy that the next person hearing the story doesn't need to have to hold. Okay, so I'll give you an example. I had a team member that her mom committed suicide when she was 12, and some reason every time she told her story, she incorporated that into her story. I'm not saying it wasn't impactful to her, but what does that have to do with somebody else adding fruits and vegetables into their diet? There's nothing. And so it was like a part of her life that was a really heavy, think of it like a heavy ball. And then you're giving it to this other person. Okay, now you hold this ball. And it's heavy. It's a weight. It took down the conversation. They didn't know what to do with it. You could see on the other person's face, like, what do I do with this? Like that was way more than what I was expecting to have to hold the weight of your story. And it just, again, changed the atmosphere. So there might be a time and a place to share that. I would say maybe more on maybe on the business side, somehow incorporating that into the story of rising above and like, but I'm not sure, but it was like in the product conversation that was handed over, that there's no reason to hand that heavy of a weight to somebody else when you're talking about your product story. It wasn't impactful in a way that brought the atmosphere up, the energy up. It was a downer. It took it down, and kind of nobody knew what to do with that. Like, why was that being shared? Okay, so number 5 is share all of the facts. Just talk about all of the research facts, talk about the doctors, talk about fact, how it's made, how the product is, encapsulated, how long ago it's, how long it's been on the market, how it was created, why it was created. So your story somehow goes to all of the facts, but never gets to the personal side of why you started taking it, why it made sense to you. So think of, facts tell again, but stories sell. Stories are the impactful side of it. And so if you're into a lot of fact telling in your story, you're actually presenting Juice Plus at that time. There's a place and a time to present the information, but if somebody's asking you to share your story, you could swing it back to one of the research studies. Like, so if you said, your hand pain, joint pain went away and you no longer have to take arthritis medication, you could swing that back to the truth that we know that can happen because of the research on reducing systemic inflammation. So you could quote or cite that research to validate what you experienced. But if the whole time you're sharing your story, you're presenting facts, you're sort of in a convincing mode. You're trying to convince them, let me tell you all the things so that you will order this, and you're going to miss that connection with them. So you just want to make sure that you touch lightly on the facts if you're at a place that you're sharing. If you're presenting, that's different, right? Like, you're presenting the information. Just don't go too heavy, too deep. There's always a video they can watch to learn more. Keep it more on, the connective side, the human side, the story side, the experience side of things, and bringing in people's stories are helpful with that. Number 6 is speak to the expense versus the value. So using the word expensive. So even if you said, well, I know some people think Juice Plus is expensive, but I think you've just planted that in their mind. All they heard, like, it doesn't matter what you say after that. They're like, she even thinks it's expensive. So you've planted that negative into their mind. So that could go for other things, where you're planting a negative seed, but speaking to the expense is really, will kill the whole thing. So I drove 3 hours to do an event for a team member. We worked really hard on inviting. She had a lot of people there. We did 2 events, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And the first event, the parents that were there, the moms, they were shaking their head. They were understanding. They were good. Like, they heard what we were saying. They heard, I could tell they were into what was said. We got to the point where we passed out the order forms, and I had her share her story. And I did not work with her ahead of time. I thought she was good. We had discussed a lot of things. We'd been talking about the event. I just didn't think of okay, let's go over your story, what you're going to say. She literally took everyone from the point of ordering to nobody ordered. They were like pen in hand, ready to order, and she deflated it so fast, nobody ordered. And this is what she did. She spoke to the expense, to the fact that she said they only order 1 fruit and vegetable gummy order for the whole family, and she keeps them on the fridge, and she only gives them 1 a day because their whole family cannot afford to take it. That statement, her story was fine until she got to that point. She said those words, and I saw everyone pen back in pocket, pen was laid down, order form was sat down, and nobody ordered. I could not bring it back after that because she was the one that had the relationship with them. I did not. I was coming in as the third party validator, but they trusted her. They had the relationship with her. So what she had to say trumped everything I said because they didn't know me. They knew her. So it didn't matter if I felt like it was of high value. When she said it's expensive, our big family can't afford it. They all had large families. So her experience, she didn't have to say that. I didn't even know that. She had never told me that they only ordered. I mean, I could see they had orders, but maybe she was delaying them or something. I'm not sure, but she didn't speak to, she could have said, we're a big family. I love that children eat free. When I order, one of our kids gets this for free. When my husband orders, another child gets it for free. For large families like ours, that's super helpful. And she could have, spoke to that experience, but she literally said, I keep it on the fridge. I only give all of us just 1 gummy a day. We only order the fruits and vegetables because it's too expensive for our big family. What? And then we were doing the next presentation, and I was like, we had a break in there where families left, we ate lunch, and then the next group came, and I was like, okay, we got to talk about this. What happened? And I repeated back what she said. And she was like, I said that. And I was like, you said that. Did you see they had their pin? They were ready to order. Do you usually say that to people? Is that part of, and she was like, I guess so, because I didn't even realize I said that. But yeah, I guess I do say that. I was like, well, that's why you're not getting customers. That's why no one's ordering. I was sort of irritated because I'd driven all that way. We had prepped all that time. They were ready to order. They understood it. And then that statement took it down. So the next one, she shared her story, and she did not say those things. And we got a couple of orders from the group that was there. So that's a really easy way to deflate the story, is to talk to the expense versus the value of it. You don't know somebody's budget. You don't know what they're willing to spend their money on. Why do you get to tell somebody, no, you can't spend your money on that? You're an adult, but you're not really an adult. You don't get to decide where you spend your money, or you're making assumptions for them. Their budget's not the same as your budget. What they value may not be the same as what you value. We all put money to things that have value to us. where somebody may spend, $400 a month on cable television, because if that's super valuable to them, I would rather pay $8 a month for Netflix, right? Like that's a different in value system. Maybe they're super into sports and they want to watch all of the games, and I could care less about any game of any sport. So I'm not going to put my money towards that. But I don't get to tell that person, you shouldn't spend your money on that. Right? Like that's their money. They get to decide that. So we don't get to decide that for somebody. We don't get to decide for them ahead of time what they're going to pay or where they're going to put their money. Just keep it on a positive and let them make that decision for themselves. Number 7, sort of kind of goes with one of the other ones, is downsell your product right up front. So instead of offering the quad to somebody and the shake, you would offer just the fruits and vegetables first, and then go up from there. So just a sales tactic. I mean, guys, we are in sales. I know some of you might hate to hear that, but it's true. Like you start with the highest product and then you downsell as you go along if needed. Let them make that decision. They can see the order form. They know what they can budget. But if you're speaking to the value, the expense is going to go away. And once they have an experience in Juice Plus, it becomes the investment in their health, right? We talked about that before. It's going to stay an expense as long as there's no experience. Once they have that experience, they'll pay whatever, like they love it. They're not going to be without it. So helping them find that experience. But if you downsell right from the front, first of all, if somebody thinks like, it would be a small thinking of it's expensive, that's what's going to drive that behavior. You're still thinking it's expensive if you're going to downsell up front. I don't, because I know they're going to have a stronger experience if they're flooding their body with more. I'm going to share the quad and I'm going to share the shake with them. That's 45 plant foods and the omegas. Like that's less than what I could eat out. It's like a third or like at least half of what I could eat out for lunch sometime. People are spending the money somewhere. The value is so high to me. I'm not going to be without that. And so it's not an expense, and it is an investment to me. But if I start with the lowest price point, I'm already telling them it's expensive. I want them to have the best experience. So I'm going to offer them everything that I take with a strong recommendation. This is what I take and this is why, and then let them decide where they go from there, right? Don't make that decision for them. So don't downsell right from the beginning. The next one would be number 8 is get off track and go on and on and on and on and on about details that do not matter. Details that are not taking the story to, your experience, but like you're just going off all over the place. Let me give you a business example. If somebody asks you, what do you do? And I'm a mom of 3, I'm a teacher, and I do Juice Plus. If I speak to my kids first, that's where the conversation is going to go. If I want it to go there, then that's where it is. If I speak to the fact that I'm a teacher, then that's where the conversation is going to go. They're going to ask questions. Oh, where do you teach? What do you teach? What age group do you teach? How long have you been teaching? Just naturally, that's what they're going to start asking questions on, which is fine if that's where you want the conversation to go. If you're wanting to direct it towards nutrition and health and have a conversation with them about the product, then you're going to have to direct it there first. And so you could say, I help busy families simplify their nutrition. And then they'll ask some questions about it. And then you can say, I also teach, or I've got 3 kiddos, and that could be incorporated into your story. But if you go on and on and on about other things, it's never even going to get to the point where they're asking you about the product, right? You kind of direct the conversation there by your first statements. But if you're sharing your story in an experience setting, like you've got a group and you're at an event like we're talking about, and then you start going on and on and on about the details of your story, and 8 minutes later, you're still talking, you've lost them. Like there's so much information in there. They don't need to know that. Again, are you offering them a ball that's too heavy, that's not really theirs to carry in that conversation? It's information they don't need to know. And then your experience gets lost in that. So it needs to be concise, and it doesn't need to be 8 minutes long. There just doesn't need to be that many details. So stay on track and just don't keep going on and on about things. Number 9 would be to exaggerate your experience or make promises. Does it sound too good to be true? That's what your person is thinking. No way. There's no way the product does that. Like, that's ridiculous. If it seems too big to be true, if it really is like it's that big of a story, take it back to the research, touch on those research points so that they know, okay, this is based on facts as well. But if it's an exaggerated story to where I've heard people, and I'm like, that's not even true. Like, it's not true. Like, where did that go? Like, that was really expanded on and that seemed exaggerated. So if you're exaggerating, the person that's listening, they can catch that. Like, they're going to know that. They're going to catch it and be like, that's unrealistic and probably not accurate. And if it's a story like that to where this product cures, whatever, then we're going to be on especially social media. You have to be careful about that. Like, you don't want to make claims, but even within a story experience with other people, like, there's not a need to make claims that are over exaggerated. There's just not. They're not going to buy it. They're not going to buy your story, and they're going to see it for what it is, as an exaggeration. And then number 10, never write your story out in an organized way and never practice it. Never tell it to anyone else and just start fresh in front of a large group and share your story. I promise you it's not going to be as impactful as if you take some time and write it out. Like, there's so many great worksheets that we have of how to tell your story. There's some excellent resources we have, and for time's sake, we're not going to go into that today. We've sort of done that in other times, but really, like, if you want a deflated and not that impactful story, don't ever write it out. Don't practice it with anyone. Don't talk to your upline about it. Just shoot from the hip all the time and just go with it. It'll be long. It'll be exaggerated. It'll either be too emotional or not enough emotion. You'll downsell. You'll speak to the expense. Like, this is the default. I don't know why. Like, why can't it default to where we do all the right things and say all the right things and that's just easy? I don't know why. Like, dysfunction is always the default, it seems like, in any situation. And this is the default that we will go to. And we just have to be careful by writing it out and practicing it with somebody else. Just those two things really can make a story way more impactful. You're going to feel confident in that storytelling. It's going to give you a boost of, like, okay, I did that well. And next time I'm going to do it even better. And you get more connective in your story. And again, if you're leading a group and you have people in your group that do these things in their story, it is your job, if you will, to take it and then spin it to, whatever. So an easy way to do that would be, I haven't thought of it that way. Here's what I have found. Or I think what you might be saying is, or from our last conversation, you mentioned this, and like, take it to the positive again, like redirect them to the positive. And then you just kind of wrap it up. All right. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay. Next person, and move along. Like, if somebody's just going on and on, like, you're probably going to have to wrap it up. But even better, if you're going to have people share, work with them ahead of time, and then that those stories are going to be more impactful. So a good leader is able to say, hey, let's work on that together. I can see that you weren't super confident in sharing that story. Let's work on that together. Let's make it really bold and confident. And probably that team member is going to be like, oh yeah, thanks. Like, I kind of felt like I was all over the place. They can recognize that themselves. So I would love to hear from you guys. Do you connect with any of these? Have you done these yourself, or have you seen it done? Did I miss anything? Any other ways to deflate your story?
Stacy, Marcia had a question. What do you do when someone in the audience is brave enough to say, but it's so expensive, and they deflate you? So I think you kind of covered that, but how would you come back with that?
If they're going to be that bold in a presentation, I would be just as bold. I would say, really? Like, expensive compared to what? Put it back on them. If they're going to be interruptive and that bold, I would be bold back, or sort of confrontational back with them. Just like, really, compared to what? Like, what are you comparing it to? And then let them out, answer themselves. I've never had somebody in a presentation say that. Maybe at the end, like when we're looking at the order forms, they may say, I'm just not sure how I can afford this, or, for our whole family. But I've not actually had anyone say, well, I think this is super expensive, because it's just, I don't know. It would be a really odd person that would do that. Let's just say that. And then everyone else in the room was like, that guy's odd. That was strange. That was confrontational for no reason. Like, it doesn't make that person look smart, or everyone's like, yeah, what that guy said. They're like, why'd that guy say that? So I wouldn't take it too serious that, and everyone else is going to say, oh yeah, I'm going to agree with him. It does plant that negative seed, but you could just say, really, tell me, expensive compared to what? And then he was like, well, I pay $8 of vitamins, at Walmart or something. You can say, oh, okay, great example. There is a difference between vitamins and food. Let's compare this to food. That's what this is. Look at the food label, and then take it back to the truth. I did have and I say a guy, I'm sorry, guys, if you're watching. The only time that I can think of that someone was super negative was a guy in a conversation. I was presenting, and he was throwing out some negative comments. His arms were crossed. He was leaned back in his chair. He wasn't having nothing of what I said. And I recognized he's taking the whole tone of this completely down. I've got to spin this around. And so I didn't give him the floor necessarily, but I sat down versus standing presentation. You could tell he calmed down from that. Like, he did not like that I was standing. And then he didn't like that. He felt like I was telling him what to do. So I changed it from presenting to more conversational. And then I asked him some things, and there were some odd things that he was saying, but there was a couple of things I was like, okay, I can see that. And I was just like, great point. I've never thought of it that way. And so, I would just kind of wrap it around. I just tried to take it, just me sitting down took the tone back to a neutral. It was interesting to watch that happen, to where his arms were uncrossed. He ordered, and then he brought us like 5 customers after that. And so, I don't know why it was kind of a personal thing for him, but that's the only time I've had somebody in a presentation that was asking like pointed, difficult questions, sort of interruptive.
When you said compared to what, too, I sometimes I go, just yesterday I bought an apple, an orange, and a banana, and oh my goodness, it was over $3. So it's a comparable thing. So but that was a good question. Thanks for the answer. I think it benefited everybody.
Yeah. Somebody I saw said they relate to everything. Like I said, these are things I've done. I'm not saying everyone else did them. They're things that I have done as well. Any other questions? No? All right.
Hey, Stacy, I put this in the chat, but I just want to say, in order to practice that answer to the question, what do you do? Because it comes up, and so it'll take you off guard if you're not ready. So I practice an affirmation every day that is an answer to that question. I help people simplify their nutrition. I help whatever, whatever you want that to be. But like 1 sentence or 2 at the max, but in an affirmation, so that it's fresh in my head. I know exactly what I'm going to say to that question every time.
What is it that you say, Marcia? I love that.
I say, I am an affiliate with a health food company that is Simplified Nutrition. I help families simplify their nutrition.
Yeah.
And sometimes I say a little more depending on who I'm talking to.
Right.
But I start with that. I'm an affiliate with a health food company that is Simplified Nutrition. I say they have researched and simplified nutrition.
Very good. Excellent. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question. The list that you was talking about for the 10 points.
Yes.
When I came in, I think you were on number 4. Would you mind giving me the first 3 of them, or can somebody put them in the chat?
Yeah. Are you in our Voxer chat?
Oh, I need to get in there. How do I get in there?
Look for me, Stacy Turner.
Okay.
And then probably someone on your sponsor can help you find me too, if you're
Okay.
if you're not.
Yeah, I'll find you.
Yeah, look for me and then I'll add you in there and then I'll put the recording in and I'll put the 10 things listed out for you guys.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. All right, I'm going to stop recording.